Hello again, everybody. This is James Bartley, and you're watching and listening to the Cosmic Switchboard Show. Today, my very special guest is Ted Rice, a close colleague and protege of Barbara Bartholomew. We both had Barbara as mentors, essentially, along with Stuart Eglinton. And I want to welcome you both to the Cosmic Switchboard Show. And hello, Ted and Stuart. How are you?
Great,
Hey,
great to be here.
thank you for inviting us to be on your show. It's a pleasure.
The pleasure is all mine. Like we were just saying before we started, uh, all those years that we'd work with Barbie, and Barbie was like the ultimate spy master in many ways, where she was able to keep all these secrets, all this information in her head, and she conducted herself so professionally and helped and healed so many people, and it's nostalgic for me talking to you because it brings back all the memories, the warm feelings I had just talking to her and the kind of soothing kind of uh healing kind of aspect she had. Just talking to her, she had this way, as you know, of really calming you down, especially if you had a really rough night, alien abduction wise, you know.
Ted,
So what Carla told me was, like you just said, Masquerade of Angels was supposed to be just the first of a number of volumes. There was so much information that had been amassed in your work with Barbie and with Carla that the work necessitated a number of volumes, but of course that never came to pass. Uh, but like you're saying, you still have a lot of the information, right? Now, one of the things Barbara mentioned to me was there was a whole aspect of cloning that you were going to really delve into in the second book. Uh, did did you want to
Yes.
talk about the parts of the second book which should have come out had not all this happened, right? And then then we can just go from there, wherever you want to go, Ted.
Oh, okay. Well, I have talked so much in the past already about cloning. Uh, I I I don't
before we go, do you guys hear a pinging noise?
know.
I'm hearing it. Again, this is a new computer. My previous one died, so I'm just learning the nuances of it. So that could be coming from my end, but I just recorded an interview with someone the other day, and I didn't have this problem. So let's
Yeah.
let's try to
See,
muddle through.
when me and Ted are talking, we get these noises that come through.
Uh,
Sometimes it's like just a telephone ringing, and there's no telephone in either of our rooms, that's actually ringing, but we can hear it through the speakers.
yes. I mean,
Um,
it's one thing for people to get interference and harassment by deep black elements of the military and government, which is bad enough. But when the interference comes from the aliens themselves, right? Uh,
yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah.
there's a whole series of weird paranormal spiritual warfare reprisal events occur, and it's not a coincidence. As time goes on, you realize that this is deliberate. But anyway, please
Yeah.
continue.
Um, Ted, sorry, you were going on about cloning, Ted. Sorry.
Uh, Well, I mean, there's been so much about that. I hate to just talk about the same thing, but what I saw in that UFO, and there I was, this was the abduction where I was probably around 8 years old. And my family and I were living out in a rural area on a farm owned by my grandmother. It was probably a 300 to 500 acre farm. Uh, they had big fields of cotton and all kind of products. I was crossing this field going from my grandmother's house across the cotton field to another area of the farm where we lived. And it was a very cloudy, balmy day, very stormy looking, dark clouds. And as it wasn't raining yet, but as I crossed this field, I stopped and I looked up at the dark clouds above me, and shining through that dark cloud was a light so bright it was blinding. And I remembered that without being under hypnosis. I talked to Carla about it, and I said, this is one of the reasons I want to look at that. I remember that all my life, but I didn't remember anything else other than stopping and looking at that light. Now we move on to the regression with Barbara. under that, I saw myself be floating up in a beam of light coming out of that dark cloud. And I just very slowly, like riding an elevator, went right up. As I got into the bottom of the cloud, there was like a big grate, like an iron gate, like at someone's yard, you know. And it was a grate there, but you went through the floor. Now, the grate appeared to be like solid metal, but yet I passed right through it. And that was puzzling to me. I don't know if I've ever talked about that part before or not. But then I'm inside a small room, and there are three funny looking little characters that I now know as Greys. And they said something to me. I heard them in my head. And of course, now I'm a child. I started answering them verbally, and they very quickly said, "Don't do that. That hurts hurts us. Say nothing. Just say it in your mind, and we will hear you." So we started then communicating in English back and forth. They told me where to sit, and I sit, and I looked out the window, and I could see my grandmother's house, and we were above it. And we then began to accelerate and go above the clouds, and I saw the sun above the clouds. It was light, but never experienced an airplane or anything. I didn't really comprehend at my age what was going on, but I'm telling you what I saw. Then we went, we kept going further and further away until it kept getting darker and darker and darker. I'm assuming, and I've shared this before, we were going into space, but we were going extremely fast. And then I could see out this window something that looked like a huge blimp, but it was metallic looking, but it was tremendous inside, and there were little portals, and I could see little tiny things that looked like, just looked like little gnats or little flies going in and out of these portals on this huge whatever it was. And I now say I think that was a mothership. And as we got closer, I saw that these little gnat looking or fly looking things were actually some type of vehicle going in different portals. So they were coming from all directions, and there were mass numbers of them coming and going. We go into one of the portals, and we sit down and we park, and I'm taken out, and then I'm taken into a room where there's right at the moment, I'm going to say there's two characters. There is a little small human looking nurse. She's wearing a nurse's gown or uniform and little nurse's cap, and she has straight burgundy colored red hair. She has funny looking lipstick and rouge. At first, I thought she was human. Standing in there with her, giving her directions or orders, was a taller figure than her, but not much taller, dressed, had real Dracula-looking shaped hair, like a widow's peak hair. Also had on makeup that made him look white. He had on a blue and white jumper suit attire. He had a purple and green, dazzling in color, almost sparkled robe hanging from his shoulders. And he was giving her directions, so he was in charge. She made me, reluctantly on my part, get naked. I had no clothes. I was stood up in front of a metal, like looked like sheet metal plate on the wall. And when it was activated, then it lit up and there were all kind of lines in it, flashes of light, all different kind of things going on. So this metal sheet in detail here actually turned out to look more like a TV screen once it was activated. But I'm not seeing a TV show, but I'm seeing the veins in my body. I'm seeing the shape of my brain beyond the skull. I'm seeing all kinds of things in this screen there. And later, I told Barbara, and this was in another abduction where we looked more at this, I said, it's counting every hair on my head. It's counting and recording every freckle on my body, every mole, every bump, every scar. It's imaging everything there is about me. And after that was done, then I was made climb up on a table, like it looked like a regular doctor's examination table. And I sit there for a little bit. And then finally, the nurse comes over. And by the way, this nurse under the second regression, I could see her more clearly, and she or he or whatever it was actually a small gray dressed like a little human nurse to keep me from being as frightened. The larger character that I saw, instead of looking like Count Dracula, actually was a taller gray with all this garb on and this makeup to make him look human as possible.
I thought Count Dracula is interesting because what is alien abduction? It's a form of vampirism, and then this Grey chose to appear as a vampire.
Yeah, well, I didn't think of him as a vampire at that time, but I can see, you know, the characteristics there that would make you think that, and maybe that is where Count Dracula actually came from when it got installed into humanity,
Yeah.
as witnesses that had also been through what I'm describing here to
Yeah.
you.
And Dracula
But
could turn into mist.
yes, and so moving on from there, the nurse brings me in like a little cup is some green liquid, which was probably equivalent to about a third of a cup of liquid, maybe a little more. And it's the room is kind of dark. This is an interesting thing you may find interesting here, is there were no light fixtures anywhere. The entire place simply just was a natural illumination. It was some type of energy in the air that made it light just naturally. And everything had just a tiny bit of a blue hue to it. Okay. So there were no wall switches, there were no lamps, there were no light fixtures anywhere. The atmosphere itself simply glowed that color where you could see. She brings me this green liquid and tells me that I must drink it, and I refuse to drink it. I said, no, I want to go home. She says to me, if you want to go home and see your mother again, then you have to drink this liquid or you'll never go home again. So reluctantly, I drank it. And just as soon as I drank it, I felt like my entire insides were being eat up by an acid or fire or something. It was extreme burning sensation, like I was just burning alive. And then I remembered seeing myself cough up some of the liquid, and it dripped from my chin. And then, you know, they lay me over flat, and then I felt myself take my last breath. It all happened very quickly. There was no delay in this. It all happened after I drank that liquid. It all happened within, I would say, within seconds, 30 seconds, 45 seconds at the most, and it was over. And then I saw, and now I'm looking at this like third person because Barbara has me under hypnosis. So and she had me viewing this as an observer, so, rather than actually living it over again. She had me observing what was happening to me to help contain the fear. And she had learned that this worked better to do that, but you get the same results, according to her. So first I see a shadowy, ethereal looking figure rise up out of my little body and stand up. And I'm thinking possibly the Dracula guy escorted that figure over to the side. I didn't see it again. And under hypnosis, we couldn't find it again. But I saw that figure. And then I saw rise up behind that a glowing, brilliant light came out of my body that was as brilliant as that light that pulled me up into that dark cloud. It was absolutely blinding. And it was a mass of it. And I could not find under hypnosis that it had any consciousness. It may have. I felt that it had totally just a mass of love. And I told Barbara at that time, I said, it's an energy field of pure love. I said, I think it's the God spark that's in all of us. And so the next thing I know, they put a little black box on my chest and they activate this little black box. And I watched this mass I'm describing to you as the God spark being coiled into the inside of this little box. And then the little box is unplugged and they take the little box with that in it and they take it away over to the side somewhere. I'm not sure where it went from there. The next thing I know is I'm in a corridor walking down like a highway, and I could hear this drumming or beating kind of sound, like some dull machinery in the background. And as we get closer, I begin to have panic attacks. So Barbara and I had to back up. We had to reapproach this situation a little more cautiously, and Barbara had to talk to me and get me more ready to meet what was making this noise. Finally, we get there and I'm able to see it. And it is rows and rows and rows. And when I say rows, it's like you can't see the end of it down this corridor. And they're vats or tubs. And Barbara has me look inside to see what's inside these tubs. And of course, I panic again. But finally, I'm able to look, and I see inside these tubs are little human fetuses. And I'm going to say there was 4 to 6 in each tub. And the tub was altered or manufactured in a way that the end of it had the uterus of a cow. So these fetuses were birthed like they actually birthed in a human mother through these artificial vaginas. And I watched one being birthed out of that, and then they took it away. They brought it to life. It cried. I saw it. I witnessed it, and they took it away. And so,
why did they use the cow uterus and not a human uterus?
Well, to use the humans, first of all, from what I understand from Linda Moulton Howe, bovines are genetically very susceptible to human blood, so they can keep these fetuses in there for psychological reasons. They birth it so that the fetus will actually experience a birth psychologically. I don't under the details of why, but that was the reason. That was what came up with me in talking to Barbara. She asked the same thing. My opinion was, since there were thousands of these things, because they're manufacturing these from all over the planet, there are mass numbers of them, so it's big business.
Mhm.
If they had all these women fetuses, or excuse me, had all these fetuses being birthed from human bodies, I would imagine they would be. Remember these tubs, these vets, they're not human. They are products that have been manufactured. To have human women birthing these, they would have to take care of all these women.
Right.
That was, I think, lying within there somewhere is the real reason for this. But, as I've said to you, Stuart, and many other people, I am a witness. I'm telling you what I saw with Barbara's help, what I saw. And I'm not telling you or anybody that I know it's 100% true, because I'm just a witness. You have a car accident on the highway, and you've got 5 witnesses, and everybody's story is going to have a variation slightly, and not everybody that saw what I saw may tell the same story, but this is what Ted saw. And so that is the cloning. Now, what's the reason for the cloning? I believe the reason for the cloning is these reptilians and these grays and these mantis, and God only knows what other creatures, because I saw other indescribable creatures while I was there. They're feeding, we are farm-raised food for them. This is big business for them. And I think I'm witness to what's going on. And I think whatever took me there was ready for these truths to come out, because of the demonic nature of it all. And for us to progress in this world, we've reached a point, in my opinion, where we have to start seeing the truth. As long as we believe in Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy and all these things, then we're living a lie. And as horrible as what I witnessed, it may be the truth, and we have to start looking at these possibilities in order for us to move forward as a human species. If we stay blinded by the light, we're not going to ever wake up to reality and find out why Israel is at war, why the Ukraine is at war, what's the driving force that created these scenarios in humanity where this is taking place, because there's some invisible force feeding off of the energy of it. They need that for their existence. And if we're going to wake up to that reality and change everything, then we got to know what we're fighting. And I believe that that's why I've seen what I've seen.
Mm,
What
uh,
what else would
Please.
you like for me to share about the cloning?
Well, that's key, and also what you've observed of the reptilians, because Barbara and I, Carla and I, and others have, Eve Lorgan and I have had discussions about the underground processing plants, as Barbie called them, these areas underground where the reptilians and other ETs have this large farming operation where countless humans, literally countless humans of all ages, especially children, are being harvested for their fluids, for their meat products, for their energy, et cetera, et cetera. In the discussions you had with Barbie, uh, what did you learn about that, and how does that tie in, perhaps, with what you just described and what you just talked about, the farming aspect of it all?
Well, you got to understand, out there in space and perhaps under the ocean, there's some huge motherships that house numerous numbers of these species of aliens. And they're feeding on our energy. In my opinion, the light that I taught that illuminated the ship it comes off of human energy that they have siphoned off, and they know how to use mass doses of it to light the, because they don't have electricity. Uh, and then you've got and we have all these people that think these reptilians are our friends. The mantis are our friends. I've been told the mantis are the caretakers of the children that they're seeing after. But nobody stops to ask themselves, what are these creatures eating? What's their food source? And nobody wants to believe that I've witnessed mantis eating on like a buffet line where they're eating children's livers and hearts and internal organs. They're feeding on them. And I witnessed this. I saw it firsthand. And Barbara had a hard time with me when I'd see these things. It was all I could do to keep from just going absolutely crazy. I mean, it went against everything that I believed in my life. And I
yeah,
didn't want to know these things.
yeah.
I truly didn't want to know it.
Ted, let me ask you, why don't they just eat the cloned bodies and not the free-range humans that are walking around?
Well, the clone bodies haven't been out grazing. They don't have any material. It's just like a newborn baby that's just been birthed. It hasn't been eating any protein. It's been living, off of the fluids inside its mother's body. They want nutrition. They want minerals. And not only that, they want the energy that our soul creates. Like they can't feel. Oh, let me tell you, one of the things I screamed at it with Barbie the first time, and I said, these people, these beings, they have no feeling. It's dead. There's no emotion. They don't care if you live or die or if you're burning alive. It doesn't matter to them at all. They have no feeling whatsoever. Until you've been in the presence of that, you don't know what demons are. You have no idea what it feels like. And it's god awful. It is. It's so frightening. And they want this energy off of us. They want our flesh that's rich in nutriments, you know. Uh, and we don't know what all they're getting there that from it that we're not aware of too. It's like our friend Janet said to me, well, fresh veal is quite delicious, you know. Well, I'm sure there is something coming out of it, or the mantis wouldn't be feeding on those babies,
Yeah, specifically children.
specifically children. So they're getting something out of it. But you know, I don't know the answer to all that. I just know I saw at Dulce when I was taken to the underground base there, I witnessed people being brought in small crowds, and they were in zombie land. They were like frozen on pause. And I saw and went up close to a beautiful young lady and her son. And I watched them being stripped from their clothing and rolled into the slaughterhouse. And I heard their bodies being ripped apart. Now, this has been very hard for me, people, but I'm telling you what I witnessed, and this is what I saw. I'm not going to paint you a pretty picture when I didn't see one. But I was taken so that I could personally witness what's going on in the lower levels of Dulce so that I could tell people. And for years I've held back because it was just absolutely too awful to tell anyone. And I didn't know how people would react. And also I was afraid that my life might be put in danger by spilling the beans on what I saw. But I'm going to tell it here today. And for those of you that are have a weak stomach, I suggest you stop listening to it. Or if you can't deal with fright very well, maybe you need to not listen to the rest of this, okay? I'm trying to think for your best interest. But we get there to Dulce, and we approach an area where small crafts are coming in. There's lots of them. It's like a big hangar. And out of each craft, I could see that they would bring out one, sometimes two. I don't know if there was three or not. It could have been three, maybe, humans. And they put them in like a little buggies that was on like a rail track. And they set the people up in that. Now, the overseers operating the system, shockingly to me, were human, or they appeared to be human. And what shocked me even more was these tall, Nordic, blonde-haired, blue-eyed men operating this system were wearing uniforms with the swastika on the shoulders, an emblem, an insignia of the swastika. Now, think about this and think about World War II and what all was going on there, and the association of this might indicate who was controlling Hitler and what was really behind all that.
Yeah. In Henry Crane's book as well, he did mention that different groups of humans worship different reptilian gods unwittingly, and that sometimes the reptilian gods would fight each other, and they would get the humans to try and wipe out the other group.
Yes.
In this case, I'm drawing comparison. He draws comparison to Hitler and the Jews.
Mm-hmm.
That's where his intense hatred for the Jews came from. It was influenced by these reptilians. Anyway, if you could just carry on.
Well, we drew close to where these humans overseers were working. These overseers could not see me, nor the entity that was guiding me and taking me there. We were, to me, ethereal. We were not in solid form where they could see us, but these workers, these Nordic people, were solid material. The humans they brought in, they put in these little train cars, were all sitting there like zombies, like they were stunned. And one of the things that bothered me in the first time I saw this with Barbara under hypnosis, it really wrecked me emotionally. And I saw a young woman of maybe 28 to 30 years old, a very pretty, attractive brunette lady, and she had a little boy with her about 7 or 8 years old. And he was sitting there with her. Both of them had been brought in, and I panicked, and I knew that something bad was about to happen to them, and I ran to wake them up, and I got right in their face, and I was like yelling
to wake up, and they were not even aware I was there, and the Nordic overseers couldn't have seen or hear me either. So I was protected in that sense. Some way they had me concealed where nothing was aware that we were there. But this woman, they rolled on and went on down the conveyor belt, and so then we moved to a different area, and the person that was taking me, or the entity that was taking me, stopped and said, "Listen." And I stopped, and we listened, and in the background you could hear kind of like a very dull ripping kind of noise. And I remember beginning to feel panicky, and I didn't want to go see what was making that awful noise. And the entity that was taking me insisted and said, "You must see it. You must see it." And so I looked, and what I saw were human torsos hanging on big meat hooks, and they hooked bone to hooks in the back of the body, and they were ripping the bones out of the human bodies to fillet it.
And who was doing this?
The Nordics, these overseers.
Do you remember watching Extraordinary Deceiving? Do you remember
Never
that?
heard of that. No, I never heard of it.
No, we definitely watched this. It was remember we spoke about the guy waking up in his clone. You said it was a pretty good documentary.
Oh yeah, I do remember now.
Do you remember what he was saying? That he was walking past one of these Nordics, and he said it was like their face just kind of shifted briefly into a reptilian face and then shifted back. It was like a hologram that was put over the face.
Right. Okay. Now I remember now. Thank you. Yes.
Is it possible that this might have been an illusion?
It's possible.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with this phenomenon, anything is possible. You know.
Royce, sorry, continue.
It's quite all right. The next phase of Dulce that I saw was we went to a large room that was extremely cold, and inside this room were boxes that were like little small metal caskets, only they weren't caskets, they were more like coolers, and they were bringing in human body parts, arms, legs, torsos, all kinds of body parts, and packing them into these crates. And then there were a lot of them. It was a big operation, and I saw, I'm going to say probably 6 different Nordics working on 6 different boxes at one time, if I recall correctly, and they were packing all this in, and then they were putting the boxes, once they're full, on a conveyor belt roller, and it reminded me of present day where your luggage comes in at an airport on those rollers. It was like rolling on that, and it rolled into an area where there were a lot of craft waiting, and they were loading them, these crafts where they were taking them, in my opinion, I assume they were taking them out to colonies in space somewhere, or colonies here on our own planet that we're not aware of.
Wow. It's a meat processing plant. We've touched on it briefly before, but
yes, but I never really went into detail like I just have now, and that's all I saw on that, and I don't ever really want to see any more.
And what did the good aliens say anything about this at the time?
It was after this that I was told that they wanted me to witness what was really happening so that I would tell people. And I shared all this with Barbara, but unfortunately, Carla left us before I was able to share all this with her, because her sickness came about so fast that Barbara and I had not covered a lot of this in our hypnotic regressions.
Yeah. I remember Carla did briefly touch on it before, where she said that you just reminded me of it when you were saying that people were in a zombie state, and you were shouting at them that you can't treat our people this way.
Right.
Yeah. So these Nordic looking beings are in Nazi uniforms. That's an interesting part as well.
And also, while it's popped in my head here, I'm not the only case that Barbara had worked with that had seen this. I was one of several that she had worked with over, say, a 10-year period that had seen very similar. Their accounts were very similar to what I saw, and they also reported the Nazi swastika. This story has to be told. People have to know what we're dealing with. This was a processing center where these children were being prepared for food to feed these mantis. And they were taken in there, and all of their extremities, their arms, legs, their heads were all removed by a laser knife type thing. They just seared right across it and it dropped off. And these parts of the bodies were packed in containers to be sent somewhere else.